Welcome, Mainers. You have stumbled on the hoMEviews podcast, an educational resource for homebuyers, homeowners, and everything in between. This week, we are talking with Dan Brennan about his role here at MaineHousing. Dan Brennan became MaineHousing's director on April 9th, 2018. Prior to becoming director, Dan served in a number of senior staff positions at MaineHousing, overseeing multifamily asset management and development efforts, weatherization, fuel assistance, and home repair programs, and federal programs providing federal rental assistance and funding for Maine's homeless shelters. Dan joined MaineHousing in 1993 as their first internal auditor. Please join me while I chat with the lovely Dan Brennan. Welcome back, listeners. We are continuing our episodes about the interdepartmental insights for MaineHousing, and today I have Dan Brennan with me, and he's going to talk a little bit about his position. Just as a quick introduction, my name is Maggie. I'll be your host, and I'm part of the homeownership department. How are you today, Dan?
I'm doing great, Maggie. Nice to be here.
Yes, it's nice to have you here. So let's talk about the basics first, as our audience may not know you like others who work at MaineHousing do. What is your role here at MaineHousing? And as a subsequent question to that question, how much control do you have here?
Sure. Well, thank you. So I am the director of Maine State Housing Authority. I've been the director since 2018, and I've been an employee here for 33 years. So my basic job is to oversee the day-to-day operations of the agency, and most importantly, to carry out the vision that the Board of Commissioners has for us. As far as control, our statute, which kind of dictates who we are and how we're supposed to operate, it gives all the authority and control to the director, which is a little scary. But I can't, obviously one person can't do this job. And so I have a team of support, senior director level folks, as well as a bunch of committees that help me make the decisions that I need to make to help us do what we do to help Maine people.
That's wonderful. And who do you talk to in the government on a daily basis?
Yes, we talk to many levels of government. So at the state level, we have a very strong relationship with the governor's office. Now, I don't work for the governor. I work for our Board of Commissioners, and MaineHousing is an independent agency of the state. But it's very important to me that this agency have a strong working relationship with the governor and her team. So we have a very close relationship with them, and we talk with them once or twice a week. Sometimes it's scheduled, and sometimes it's just a phone call that comes in. Right now, the legislature is in session, and we have a committee that oversees what we do or is very interested in what we do. And we keep close contacts with the chairs of that committee, the Housing and Economic Development Committee, and they're very busy right now. And we also, at the federal level, talk to a lot of people in government, our congressional delegation, their staff people in Washington, as well as they're out here in Maine. And then once a year, in fact, in about a month, I'll be traveling down to Washington to meet with Senator King, Senator Collins, Representative Pingree, and Golden. And so we really try and keep a close relationship with those politicians and government officials that give us the money to do what we try and do.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you that are unaware, just to repeat sort of what Dan said, Maine State Housing Authority is called that, but we are quasi-state. We are not actually part of the state government. We are our own nonprofit. So many people are unaware of how MaineHousing works and where we get our money from. How does MaineHousing work with the state in that way, as far as, like you said, getting funds in order to fund our programs?
So the state created us. There's a statute, a law on the books that created Maine State Housing back in 1969. And within that statute, it gives us the authority to act and do the things that we do. So it's very much a parent-child relationship at the very beginning. We're over 50 years old now. But the state has given us the authorization to do one of the primary functions that we do, and that is we raise money by selling bonds to bondholders on Wall Street. We're essentially a bank. And so we raise our money not through deposits like most banks do. Most banks will take deposits and lend money out to do their mission. But what we do is we raise that money by borrowing it from bondholders. And that allows us to buy mortgages that are created for single family borrowers, first time home buyers, as well as we make mortgages to developers of multifamily housing. So the state has created us to be a bank, and that is how our bank works. The state has also given us the authority to receive money on behalf of the federal government to operate a whole host of programs that help people pay their rental assistance, that help homeless shelters operate, that help people stay warm in their homes with heating assistance and weatherization funds. So we operate dozens of federal programs under the state's authority to help several several thousand people a year with hundreds of millions of dollars. And then lastly, through the budget process, the state allocates sometimes funding to us to help run our programs, to help developers develop housing, to help buy our first-time home buyer loans, to help with homelessness. And so we have a very close interaction with the state. Frankly, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the state, but they created us again as independent because they do not want Maine Housing, and I do not want Maine Housing to be seen as political, and that we're not lined with any party, that we are here to help the people of Maine with their housing needs, regardless of who's in office or who's in power. That's what makes it so fun.
Absolutely. That sort of leads me to just a quick comment on, so we've had Kelly Watson, who is the Director of Homeless Initiatives, and we also have had Scott Thistle on, who is the Director of Communications. And both of them mentioned how important it is for every organization or every department at Maine Housing to work together to accomplish the goals that we've set out for ourselves. So even though we're sort of we're split apart into these specific departments, right? Home ownership, homeless initiatives, communications, P&R. Everybody works together towards that common goal. Do you feel as though everybody is on a daily basis working together towards that?
Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, people often say we're going to go in and break down silos. Well, we created the silos by the way we've organized ourselves. So what we try and do is we try and manage the silos, and we want to make sure that silos are talking to one another. And so we've tried to create a culture here at Maine Housing where people know each other in other departments, that people interact with each other in other departments. We have groups that do social interactions through our Act Well committee and our employee experience team, where we're trying to really get people to get out from your desk, go meet your coworkers around the agency, get to know what they do. We have Facts and Snacks, which is a wonderful opportunity to get away from the daily work and learn something new. It could be gardening, it could be how to do a will, it could be many different things, but it's just a way to interact. There's 185 people that work here at Maine Housing, and it's important that everybody feel comfortable with one another. And the other thing that's very important to me is an approach that we're trying called employee-centered leadership. And what that basically means is that our employees are the most important thing here. It's not the mission, it's not the Board of Commissioners, it's not myself, it's the employees. And if we can manage this organization to empower employees to have a real voice, that's very important to me. And it's what's going to make Maine Housing continue to succeed into the future.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That is a great way to say that. Wonderful. In the grand network of homeownership, we're going to kind of go from global to this one department. In the grand network of homeownership, what would you say is the most important thing for potential homeowners to start doing early?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. First of all, work on paying bills on time and getting a strong, solid credit score. It's very important to establish credit. Many folks are worried about not wanting to borrow money early in their life. It's very important to borrow and pay off and establish credit. So paying bills and getting a credit score going is super important. And then also saving money. It could be $5 a week, it could be $10 a week, but get into the habit of saving money regularly and paying bills on time. That is the foundation of what will lead to you as a good candidate for home ownership. It's a very, very difficult time right now in our state and in our country because prices are so high and it can be so discouraging. So, my advice is to be patient, continue good practices of saving money, paying bills on time, and your time will come and you will become a homeowner. But it might take a little bit longer than it took someone like me, for example. The world has changed a little bit.
Oh, definitely. I've heard stories from when my parents bought a house and they bought it for 60 grand.
Yeah, yeah. When I got out of college, I was able to have a choice of 3 or 4 rental apartments that were in my price range, and I could choose which one.
Mhm.
And when I got to the point where I was gonna buy a home, I had choices within my price range. I could live in this neighborhood or this town but, folks these days, the prices have simply gone too high, and it's become really difficult. But that's part of what we're trying to do here at Maine Housing is contribute to what is a lack of affordable housing and a lack of housing in general. And if we can simply change the supply and demand ratio over time, hopefully prices will come down and become more affordable, maybe for the next generation. But it's really difficult. I've got children who are adults now and having a real hard time. But again, the practices of doing the right thing and keeping your credit score up there is really, really important.
Oh, absolutely. And we have some other resources that will be in, for those of you that are listening that don't know, any abbreviations or websites or resources that we mentioned today, I'll put in the show notes for you so that you have access to those. But we have an awesome homebuyer education course that's taught by HomeWorks that we partner with. That gives you all of the nitty gritty details about credit score and budgeting and home ownership and the best places to start for all of those things. And yeah, we have a lot of really great resources here, including a savings program that I'll definitely put in the show notes, and we definitely will have that special guest on later. Is there anything you think the public could do to help Maine Housing with its mission?
Yeah, I think members of the public can do several things. First of all, they can interact with their local legislators. Find out who your representative is in Augusta. You have a state senator, you have a local representatives. We have a citizen legislature. I've never been brave enough to put my name on a ballot. I never will, but I really appreciate folks who do, and it doesn't matter to me what their political party is. They're trying, they've offered, and more importantly, the citizens of their community have elected them to represent them. Get to know who your legislator is and talk to them about housing and housing issues and really work to support some of the initiatives that the housing industry is putting forward. Um, the same thing goes to the municipal officials, town managers, select boards, people who are volunteering in your community. Engage with your local community, and these are not easy jobs, especially in today's day and age. And so they're the helpers. I grew up was watching Mr. Rogers, right? And when
Look for the
and
helpers.
and
Yep.
look for the helpers. These are the people in your community who want to help others, and that's a lot of helpers here at Maine Housing. We are all here because we want to help. And so I think members of the public can help by engaging in their community, talking to their local legislators, as well as their congressional delegation. And the other thing I would recommend is get out and volunteer. Volunteer at a homeless shelter or a soup kitchen or a food pantry, or get involved with your church and get many of these organizations are tied in to helping the same people that we're trying to help here at Maine Housing. So there's a lot of opportunities for members of the public to help Maine Housing in its mission.
Yeah, that's great. And I will make sure to also in the show notes put some notes on how you can find your local representative, legislator, all of those really great things. I was thinking as you were talking that this also would probably trail back towards voting time. right?
Yeah.
If you're thinking about these people who are going to represent specific issues that maybe you have a really strong opinion on, to research those people before you go to a voting booth and see where they stand on
Yeah.
all of these things, or even reach out to them before you go to a voting booth and say, hey, I have a question about this. It's something I'm really passionate about. Can you tell me more about how you feel about that, or what you might be able to do to help?
Yeah, I think educating yourself on issues you care about is incredibly important, and being very discerning about where you get your information from. Question the source of where you get your information from. Make sure that you're focusing in on facts. It's a lot more challenging now to find those facts than it ever has been, but they're out there. And as people do their own research, you're going to come to your own decision about what's important to you. And participation is very, very important.
Yes, absolutely. When we were talking with Scott Thistle, all about communications, right? One of the questions I asked him was, where do you think the most reliable source of information on Maine housing is? And he said, well, right here
Right.
at Maine Housing, where all of our press releases are on our website, and every single piece of information that we hand out is right there. And he mentioned also that we really like to tell people all of the things that we're doing. There's not really a reason for us to keep anything squirreled away. We do like to tell everybody all of the great things that we have available and the stuff that we're doing.
And we try and be as transparent as possible. We're a public agency, which means nearly every bit of information within our building, except for personal information on folks, is public information. And we take our responsibility to educate the public about what we do very, very seriously, because it's a great story to tell, but it's also a source of facts. We are a source of facts about what is being done and what can be done. And we take that responsibility very seriously.
Yes, absolutely. What are some of the biggest takeaways you have from other HFAs around the country? You mentioned you're going to DC. I know you've been to Chicago before. What are some bigger takeaways you get from those places?
Yeah, one of the better parts of my job is I get to interact with my colleagues around the country several times a year. And so I'm on the board of the National Council of State Housing Authorities. And that is just a group of fellow states like Maine and their executive directors who get together 4 or 5 times a year, and we share information with one another. We're not afraid to steal ideas that are good ideas from other states, and we're not afraid to brag about what we think we're doing here in Maine. And it's there's a term that we've talked about a lot of R&D, which is rip off and deploy. We are more than willing to share our stuff for someone else to use. We've handed our program guides over to other states and say, adapt this to your state. So we get to be part of a think tank at the national level of the best approaches that states are taking. And that's a lot of fun. Sometimes, we can't quite compare to California because California is kind of like its own country.
Yeah, no kidding.
but I think there are other states, particularly New England. I have a very close working relationship with my peers in New England, as well as other like-minded states, the same size, same geography as Maine. I talk to my colleague in Montana all the time, Wyoming. These are rural states. These are northern states. These are um, states that have similar places like Aroostook County, which is more than rural, it's remote. And the housing challenges of our state are similar to others. And so having that network is invaluable. I'm able to be a mentor to other executive directors that come into their states, and I have benefited from people who have mentored me. And so it's a wonderful organization to be part of, and I think it makes Maine housing better that we interact with that the way we do.
Oh, I would definitely agree.
Yeah.
I had the privilege of going to DC in January last year, and like you mentioned that word think tank, there was a whole session where it was every single state's housing finance authority, like representative, and we all talked about these general questions at a table together. California was there, and I can't remember the other 3 that were at the table, but they all had these really interesting different perspectives on all of these things, and it makes you think more globally about housing versus just this little slice of Maine that we, the
Right.
little slice of the Great White North that we have up here.
And I talked about my relationship with my executive director colleagues, but at every single level of the organization, you have a peer out there that is in some other state doing exactly the same job you do and coming across the same frustrations you do. And what a great way to make that network and not feel so alone when you get in those frustrating days or a challenge that you just can't help somebody. Sometimes you call someone in another state saying, "Hey, we talked last time we were together. What do you think of this?" And it's a wonderful resource for us.
Yeah, that's great. I'm realizing as we started this conversation that I forgot to ask you the icebreaker question at the beginning. So I'm going to end our little interview with the icebreaker question, which is, have you ever lived in a house you thought was haunted?
Yes, I did.
You did.
Yes, my fraternity house at the University of Maine.
Oh boy.
Yes, I there are many stories that I've heard over the years that other people have said. It's a building that was built in the turn of the century in 1900s, and there was definitely there were definitely ghosts there, and I had one half interaction with one that kind of freaked me out one night.
Oh boy.
I knew for a fact that somebody had walked across the floor and up the stairs, and I followed it, and there was nothing there. But
There's
yeah,
nothing there.
I believe
Yeah.
in ghosts. I welcome them. If I know that I'm going into a house that's haunted or a hotel, I am always willing to engage
To
if they will.
engage.
Yeah,
That's
I think
awesome.
it's great.
That's awesome. It's been so interesting to hear the different answers to that question because
Yeah.
everybody seems to have an answer.
Right.
That they have experienced something, but they're all different. Very interesting. Well, those are all the questions I had for you today, Dan. Is there anything else you'd like to talk with our listeners about?
No, I think just to know that MaineHousing has an amazing website. If you ever want to learn about who we are and what we do, we have a tremendous amount of information on our website. I've been here 33 years, and I hope to be here throughout my entire career. I absolutely love it. It's a great place to work, by the way. So if you're looking for a job, check out our website.
Check out. We've got some things open.
We do. And no, I hope I've been helpful in educating people. And thank you so much for inviting me on.
Absolutely. It was great to have you on, Dan. Thank you so much. Hi, listeners. I just wanted to come on here and plug one of the resources that Dan mentioned in the episode. Our awesome website is MaineHousing.org. Again, that's Maine spelled out like the state, housing.org. Thank you for joining us for the hoMEviews podcast. We are always here to help and would love to answer your questions. Follow the link in the description to submit a question or comment for Maggie and the MaineHousing staff. A reminder that the views and opinions expressed in MaineHousing's Homeownership podcast are those of the speakers or authors and do not necessarily reflect the views of MaineHousing. The opinions expressed should not be construed as legal or professional advice and are provided for informational purposes only. MaineHousing makes no representation or warranty of any kind regarding the accuracy, reliability, or completeness of any information provided on the podcast. Please see the full disclaimer in our show notes for more information. And again, thanks for listening.